to the workshop this morning. Today we are going to build, actually we're wrapping a beam in a basement. So I'm doing this little reno in this basement, and you know, you've got the beam, it's a laminated beam, so we're going to wrap it and make it look like some old wood, throw some metal straps around it, kind of make it kind of cool looking. So we could go out and buy some really expensive wood, but there is a lot of character in just regular plywood. It's already got the weathered look, it's got a couple knots, got a couple cracks here. As soon as we throw some good old stain down on this, it's going to be pretty nice. So anyway, I've got this one piece cut out, and we're taking the time, and we're actually going to go with a 45. It's a little bit more difficult, but I think the end result's going to be better, so we're going to put the effort in. And I've done some real careful measurements with my skill saw. It'd be really nice if we had a big fancy table saw, but we don't. And most DIY guys, you don't have that fancy table saw, and a full sheet of plywood on a little portable one, that's pretty dangerous. Yeah. Stick with the circular saw. You need a good straight edge. So you've seen it in some of my other videos, you know how to freehand it and then use the edge of the plywood. That works all fine and dandy, but for something like this, it's gotta be a little bit more precise. So I've actually got a piece of 3/8 by 2 flat iron here, and you know, it's not going to move very easily, so I'm going to use that as a straight edge. Seems to work well. So I'm going to cut up all the pieces and then show you what I do to assemble it. Got a pretty good idea. Not there yet, but I'll get her. Alright, let's cut this up. Now I have to determine where my saw cuts. Now the best way to do that, you can measure this all day long and probably get it out, you know, a little tiny bit, but if you put your fence up, make a cut, and then you can get an accurate measurement. You can't really see the cut, it's right there. Then you can get an accurate measurement of where you're at, set your fence, make an accurate cut. Just that simple. Here's the situation. Okay, so I'm going to be running along the back side of my fence here, but my guide, or my clamp is going to get in the way. So I know that my next cut, this is going to be the back. So all I did is just put a screw in here. When I get by, I'll put the clamp back on. Good to go. Time for assembly. Now the whole idea of this beam, once I get it wrapped, once I get this built, the seams I'm going to cover it with a chunk of 2.5 by 3/16 welded up, and I've just made some squares here to mimic some bolt heads. I'll screw it in up here, and then I'll glue another mimic bolt head right there. So what I've done is kind of figured out where my seams are going to be. It'll probably be different for you if you're building one. And what I've done is just cut the width of my beam here, plus a little tiny bit, another 1/16, just so that I know that it's going to slide in well. And then we'll just screw these down. That way we know that we're perfect, then we can cap it. So let's screw that down. Just clamp it in place. You just got to make sure that you're right on the edge of your 45. Now we can stick the top of the other half on. Now when you're doing this, pretty easy to get it out of square still. You do your best. You're only covering the beam up. And what you can do, put your square on here, make sure that things are lined up. Just gotta, yeah, it looks pretty good. Yep. Okay, we can screw that down now. The screw gun, there we are. Middle one should be good. Yep. So I'm just going to put another one here, another one there. Hopefully it's snug enough that they're not going to fall out on me. And then it's just a matter of capping it. Looks good. Alright, everything's test fitted, looks good. Now it's just a matter of getting some glue on here. Now, I prefer I'd like to put glue on both sides. So we'll get the one up here first. A lot of glue here, so you gotta work fairly quickly. But don't get it so much that it starts running down and then you're gonna have to clean it up. We don't want to do that. Might as well just go on stages here. Ouch. Damn. Kind of sliver. You know, that's almost 100% chance, eh? Yeah, it went in pretty deep too. Have to do some surgery later. Okay, we got her done. Starting to dry up a little bit already, even though it's kind of cold in here. Just throw a little bit more on that. Now all I do to keep everything together is just pin it. I pin it that way I don't have to fill up any holes. The glue's going to hold her together, so. Hey, we got her pinned in. I'm running out of nails anyway. That works out okay. Glue's gonna hold her up, hold her in place. So we're gonna let that set overnight, and then we can fill in a little bit of gaps that we have here and there, and then go to stain. Just rounding off all the edges here. Now, also had to build this 4-foot piece because the beam is going to be just a little over 12 feet. So I got that done, and anywhere where there's a bit of a gapper here, we're just going to fill that. But we're going to get started on staining this. Now I'm not concerned about sanding this down. I'm just sanding the edges a little bit. You know, wherever there's a little bit of dirt or something like that, I'm leaving that on there. That's going to throw some character into the beam. So, gonna leave that. I'm going to get set up here. What I want to do is I'm going to orient everything so that it's the same as when I put it up. That way when I stain it, you know, if I'm putting a black mark in it or something like that, it's gonna be the same. So I got that orientated. Then we'll get started with staining. Show you what I do. Okay, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this beam. Now the client wants a nice dark rustic brown looking beam. So what I'm doing, I'm just using a gel stain. This one here is dark walnut. I'll lay that down first. I'm just using a sponge. Then we can get into any little grooves easily. Get it all nice and even with the foamy. Now you don't want to go too far with this. You kind of want it still a little bit wet. Then what I do, I've got some ebony, just some regular oil-based stain, not a gel. And wherever I want to just highlight it a little bit with some dark, I'll just add a little ebony and just darken it right up. Especially the knots. And you just kind of blend it all out a little bit with your rag, nice and light. Remember, in order for there to be contrast, you need to have some darks and you have to have some lights. So if you want everything all the same, you can do that, but it's up to you. But I prefer to have some light and darks because then it kind of gives it more of a weathered look. So I'm going to finish this off. And then we will let this dry. We'll turn it around and do the other side. Just going to show you the difference here. So that's just straight up dark walnut, and then you can see when you throw a little bit of dark into it, you can kind of see that it accents it a little bit. So if that's the look you're going for, absolutely give it a shot. Now when you're done, make sure that you dispose of these properly. They're wet, they can't ignite on their own. It's happened to me. I burned down my little utility trailer once. So I usually just take them outside, put them in my fire pit, or put them somewhere where they're not going to cause any issues. They'll dry when they're outside. Though it's winter time, so it might not dry too quickly, but safety first. Just finishing up the last little bit on our beam here. Now the nice thing about having it a little different color, you know, adding a little ebony here and there, it's not one all flat color like a waterbed from the 70s. It's got a little bit of variation, makes it look a little older, a little more weathered. Now we got some of those spots where the grain's really deep and the stain isn't getting in there. I'm just using a zip tie here. Drop a little bit in there. And we'll just blend her out. Just like that. Okay, make sure you check you haven't got any streaks. And when you're really happy, that's when you walk away and you let her sit for overnight, and tomorrow we're going to put a clear on here to protect it. Just finishing up on the metal pieces that I welded up and putting a clear coat on the beam. Now, all I'm doing is just using a semi-gloss engine enamel. So I've already given it one coat. Now, the clear coat, I'm using a satin rub-on. Just a simple little process, just put it on with a, I just use a foam brush. This is about the easiest way to do this. I really like this method. Very simple, and it gives me a really nice finish when I'm done. Make sure you got her well coated. And then it's just a matter of wiping it, just even everything out. Just like that. Two coats, and we're done. Gonna continue on, and then next time you see me, I hope that we're just installing. Catch you in a bit. Here's a little tip for you. Now on this little spot right here, where our 45 joint is, there's a bit of a gap. Now I use, I don't know if it's sealant and adhesive caulk. It's a water base, but I get it at my flooring store, and it just works awesome. Rag here. You want to make sure that you're done with your staining and your finish. And you just put a little bit down. And I like to vary it. This is a dark brown. Maybe put a little bit of black in there. Remember, if your eye doesn't catch it, it's all good. A little bit of black. Let's work it in. Let's take a white or wet rag, wipe off the excess, and they're good to go. This will dry a lot darker because it's a latex than what looks now, and you won't even notice.